In this tutorial, you'll learn how to prompt the user for a number. When they enter a number, it'll print out the number, and even if it's even, if we put in 9 here, it's going to print odd if it's odd. This tutorial is aimed at complete beginners, so I'll be explaining every line of code. The first thing you need to know is how to print something out, because how are we going to get a user input and print something out if you don't even know how to do it? So in Python, what you do is you type in print, and then type in whatever you want. Now, in order for it to be a string or words, you have to surround it by double quotes or single quotes. So we're going to just go ahead and print out hello world. And what we're going to do is hit play. And what we're going to see at the bottom here is terminal window pops up. And this gives you the full path to the Python interpreter. And then this part here gives you the name of the file that you're in with the full directory. And then here is the output. Now let me show you how to declare a variable. So we can do my message equal hello world. And instead of doing the print with hello world, we can fill this in with my underscore message. Now you're probably wondering, how did you just type all that so quickly? It's going to auto select what it thinks that you want. And if you hit tab, it'll autofill for you. So let's go ahead and delete line 1 of the code and hit play again. And we can see that it printed the same thing down here, hello world. Now, one other thing to note here is that this is a string type. So let's go over how you can print the type of a variable. So you type in use type, similar to the print command. And then if we put my message in here, it's going to first evaluate the type of my message and then send that into the print function. So it does the innermost first and then slowly goes to the outermost. So we're going to go ahead and print again and see it's going to say class str. That means it's a string. So variables have different types. What do types mean? Types mean that there are different functions that you can call specific to that type. And it also has certain rules for addition, subtraction, division. Some of these apply, some of them don't apply. But if you're doing like a whole number, which would be called an integer, and then you're trying to add that to a string, it's going to get really, really confused. Same thing if you try to take a string and like divide it by 2, that's utter nonsense to the machine. So now what I want to show you is, what if we put 10, which is a number, in here? And let's go ahead and delete all of our terminals so you don't get confused. And we're going to play again. And see this, because it was in double quotes, it still is a string. So now let's take out the double quotes here. And play again. And you can see now it's still printed 10, but now it assigned it an integer or int. Now, why is all this important? Because when we get user input, it always comes back as a string. So we're going to have to be able to convert from a string to an integer. So let me show you how to do that really quick. What you do is a process called casting. To do that, you can use this int function and surround that in parentheses. And even though you have the double quotes in here, what you're going to see here is that it's an integer instead of a string. So now let me clear out by hitting the trash can, all the terminal. We're going to just delete all of our code. And what we're going to do now is get a user input. So we're going to do my underscore number. And basically, whenever you're naming, by the way, you want to do lowercase surrounded by underscores. That is what everyone does in Python programming language. So we're going to do input. And then the way this works is you tell it what you want to ask the user for. So we're going to say, enter a number. And you can see here, there's this little arrow with the str. That means that it returns a string. So now let's go ahead and print out my number. And let's go ahead and now print type like I showed you before. And we're going to hit play and see this is going to say enter a number, this text right here. So we're going to enter 10. And it was 10, but it was a class string. we need it to be an integer. So how do we do that? Just like I showed you before, how we wrap the text, we can go int and wrap that around. And now if we go play and go 10, it's going to now be an integer. Now we need to know, how are we going to check if it's an even or an odd? Now, if you think all the way back to school, when you learned how to do integer division, there are two parts to it, a quotient and a remainder. And here's a very, very professional picture that I drew you to hopefully jog your memory here. If you can't remember this, then I don't know. But the important takeaway here is if we divide by 2, if it's an odd number, it's going to be a remainder of 1. And if it's an even number, it's going to be a remainder of 0. So how do we do remainder division? We use the percent sign. So we could say remainder is equal to my number, and then percent, and then 2. So now if we hit, oh, well, let's print this out. Let's print my number, all right. Print, and then we're gonna print out remainder. So let us clear our terminal, hit play, and we're gonna enter 9. And so it's 9, and it had a remainder of 1. The remainder of 1 means that is even. So now, up until this point, what we've done is ran code line 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So what if we only want to run a certain line of code in a certain situation? Well, what we do is we use something called an if statement. And it will only execute the code underneath if it evaluates the statement to be true. So what we can do is type if remainder is equal to 1. And the way we do this is we do a colon at the end, and then we tab in whatever we want. So we only want to print our number if the remainder is odd. Let's actually just print the number is odd. And let's go ahead and just always print out here the number. We're going to go my number again. It's going to print the number. And then if it's odd, it's going to print this line of code. And if it's not odd, it's not going to print this line of code. Let's hit play here. And we're going to enter a number. So let's enter 10. So that should be even. So we print out 10. And see, it didn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It went 1, 2, 3, 4. Evaluated this and then skipped 5. And you can have multiple statements here. So you could say hello, etc., etc. It's going to print out all those until you change the indent. So let's print out hello 2 here, just so you can get a sense of how the flow goes. Hit the trash can, hit play, enter a number. Let's enter 10. So in this case, since it was an even number, it skipped these lines of code. And so it went 1, 2, 3, 4, evaluated it, and then went to 7. And then if we play again, and let's actually enter, oops, gotta be careful. I gotta click down here before you enter a number. So let's hit 9. And then you could see, in this case, it evaluated that to be true. And then it went 5, 6, 7. Now, what happens if you want to ask multiple questions in an order? To do this, we would use something called elif, which stands for else if. So that now this is going to evaluate it again. So we're going to go remainder again here, and we're going to say double equals 0. Oops. And we can go print, and we're going to print out the number is even. And let's go ahead and get rid of this. So how does this work? It is going to check line 4. If the condition is not met, then it will then check line number 6. So let's go ahead and hit play again. Let's enter 10 now. And we're going to see that it evaluated this. Then it evaluated this. And it went even and hello 2. Now, if this condition was met and it was true, it would not continue evaluating down the line. It would just run this code. So go 4, 5, and then go straight to 8. Now, because a number is either even or it is odd, we don't actually have to do another condition in there. So we could have just used something called else. So it will evaluate this. And then if that's not true, in all other cases, it's going to run everything in that block. Let's go ahead and clear it one more time and hit play. And we're going to enter a number. Let's enter 10 again. And see, we got number is even and hello 2. All right, now what I want to show you is, although I did this in a way that you can figure out what's going on step by step, you can actually do this without having to do so many lines of code. So you technically could have done this. You could have done remainder int, and then after that we're going to convert, so we could do the %2. And I couldn't type, so we're going to change that. And now we don't have this, so we could have actually shortened it all the way down into that and hit play. And let me go ahead and click down here. Let's hit 10, and it's going to function the same way, right? Now we don't even need to do that. We could simplify it even more. And we can copy and paste this in remainder. And we're going to run this again. And let's put in 10. And it's still going to run. Now, if you actually write a program like this with no variables and stuff, and you're on my team, I'm going to smack you. And then I'm going to fire you. This makes it so that it's pretty much impossible for someone else to probably figure out what's going on. So you probably want to do the first one where you're like breaking it down step by step. Readability is very important for code. You'll get the hang of that eventually. Now, there is one other thing that I want to point out here. Let me hit Control-Z a bunch so I can go all the way back here. Now, I always typed in integers, which are 10. What happens if I type in just let's say not a number? Well, can't convert a string into an integer because it doesn't have any integer values in it, and it gets confused. And so now it's mad, and then your whole program crashed. Now, I can't explain to you here exactly how to fix this because it uses a whole process called error handling or exception handling, and it's way too advanced. But just know that you have to be conscious of it and test your program for other inputs that aren't what you're expecting, because the users are all not necessarily going to use your program the way that you intended on it being used. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you do, please like the video. If you subscribe to the channel, we're going to have way more tutorials that are hopefully as useful as this one to you. Check the description for playlists of similar videos.